This movement, whatever the movement is always bigger than you. It's a community effort to help somebody else.
It's human nature for us to take care of each other.
People are standing up and saying, I want to do my part in some small way.
MoveOn makes things happen, and that's what we need. A way to get involved, a way to stay involved.
It's like a ripple effect.
Neighbors and communities talking about things that matter, and then ensuring that those voices and those interests are heard in a meaningful way is how we are able to make an impact.
Anybody can learn how to do this. I went from being immobilized to being a thriving organizer and mobilizer with MoveOn's help.
Hello, MoveOn. Hello, MoveOn Progressive Power Summit. We are super excited to see you here today. We're sure you're excited too. Good afternoon to those on the East Coast. Good morning to everybody else. This is going to be such an exciting session. This is going to be such an exciting moment for all of us. So we want to know where you're from. We want to know where you're joining us from for the Progressive Power Summit. We also want to make sure that you're using hashtag Progressive Power Summit on all your social media as you talk about what we're going to talk about today. So as people are joining us from all across the country, we want to know in the chat where you are from. We won really, really big in 2020. And we know it's because of a lot of the people that are on this in this summit right now. We know there are a lot of you who are veteran voter registrars who drive around town with a table in your trunk or your back seat. and voter registration forms and a little jar of candy. We also know that this took a lot of help from those who for the first time in their lives got involved and engaged, and we won really, really big. And so there's an exciting panel today that's gonna take a walk down memory lane and talk about some of the ways that we were able to do that. My name is Durrel Douglas, and I'm a MoveOn staff member here at the organization. It's been so awesome to work here as long as I have. Basically, after what happened in 2016, the wind was knocked out of me. So 2020 really was, for me personally, the result of 4 years of engaging and resisting. And so many of you that are here at the Progressive Power Summit did the same thing. And so we're really excited to take this virtual look down memory lane right now. And on that note, I'm so excited to introduce, to pass it to Rahna and Nita, who are part of the leadership team here at MoveOn.
Thank you, Durrel. Hi, hello, everyone. I'm Rahna Epting. I'm the Executive Director of MoveOn.
And hi, all. My name is Nita Chaudhary, and I am the Chief of Program at MoveOn.
We are so thrilled to be with all of you here today. We have a big, vibrant, dynamic, and most importantly, impactful MoveOn community that has accomplished so much throughout our over 20-year history. We've been looking forward to this all week. Heck, actually, for the last month or so, because you are why we do this work. You are the heart of everything we do. You are why we're able to massively influence the fight for healthcare, for jobs, for education, for immigration, for climate justice, and more. And let me tell you, I speak from some experience with this. You are some of the most active, the most committed, and the most effective activists in the political arena. So I'm so excited for the summit, for us to be able to come together, even if it's virtually, because every time I'm with the MoveOn community, I learn, I grow, I get inspired, and I'm reminded of why we do this work together. So thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with us this weekend. And most importantly, thank you for everything that you do.
So, Rahna, I just wanted to jump in real quick. I agree with everything that you said. And I think many of you who are with us today, and thank you for being with us today, probably don't know this, but this isn't my first time working at MoveOn. I used to work at MoveOn many, many years ago. I left to found a feminist organization called Ultraviolet, which I hope you're all members of as well. And I came back to MoveOn. Why? Because of the members, because of all y'all. You have helped forge such a rich history of change and activism, and political activism in particular for MoveOn. And I have never known a more powerful and dynamic and influential and excited membership than the membership that MoveOn has. MoveOn is a powerful organization. It's able to pass legislation. It's able to organize mass mobilizations. It's able to help shift elections and the balance of power in Washington. And why is MoveOn able to do that? Because of all of you.
That's so true. Thank you, Nita. And we're glad you're back too, because I'm especially glad you came back to MoveOn, because right now we're in a moment like we've never seen before. We have the White House, yes. We have the House, yes. And we have the Senate. But we have a very slim Democratic majority. So we're in a moment where there is great potential to accomplish major milestones to create the change that we want, the change that we voted for, the change that translates into transforming our economy to make it more fair and more just and more equitable. We have the potential in this moment to make a country that is more prosperous for all of us, not just the ultra wealthy. So much of this potential is being debated and negotiated and demanded right now in the halls of Congress. And the potential to build back better is right here at our fingertips. So our advocacy, our involvement, our calls, our actions, they really matter. It takes us from potential to reality. We together, the thousands of us on this at this summit and the millions of MoveOn members all through the country, we together have the power to tip those scales. We have the power to move the debate from potential to actual progress. And we do it when we act together. And there is so much at stake in President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. And that's what we've been talking about for months. We all know it. We've been campaigning on it for months. This can be our legacy. Not just his legacy. This can be our legacy, a historic investment in America for the new era, for the new moment we're all in. When we talk about the Build Back Better agenda, we're talking about childcare. We're talking about paid leave. We're talking about a pathway to citizenship for immigrants, for making significant investments in tackling climate change and making the ultra wealthy pay their fair share and invest in this country like the rest of us do. These are policies that support our economy, our communities, and all of us to thrive. I would not have made it through this pandemic without childcare. I don't know how many of us would. Heck, I wouldn't be sitting here today without childcare. We wouldn't have made it through this pandemic without the essential workers, many of whom are immigrants, that help keep our economy functioning throughout this last year and a half. And we sure as heck are all too aware that we're not going to make it through this next generation if we don't make a significant down payment in tackling climate change. And it is all possible in this Build Back Better agenda. It's also a moment to ensure that large corporations and the ultra rich are actually investing in this country again, many of whom absurdly profited off of this pandemic. It's a moment for us to build an economy and a tax code that doesn't allow those at the very top to pay less than the middle class. This is what the Build Back Better agenda will do. It'll make things more fair. It'll grease the wheels towards true progress for all of us. And it's important to remember, despite what you might see on the news, that 98% of Democrats in Congress agree on this. But the corporate special interest groups are lining up at the doors of Congress to try to defeat it. But making this agenda a reality is within reach. It is possible. We can and we will win, because that is what we do. When we come together and we organize and we mobilize, we win. That's what MoveOn's about. The millions of us all throughout this country taking action together to impact the decisions that people make, when the people that we help elect into office. And when we pass the Build Back Better agenda, we are going to celebrate, y'all. We're going to validate that win. And we're going to remind ourselves what we can do when we act together. And then we're going to push for more, because we're going to keep going. And because a society that works for all of us, the one that we deserve, is not created by one bill alone. It's created by all of us doing our part to make this world a better place. And we have never backed down from the biggest fights. And Nita, you've been around for many of those fights, and I'd love for you to share a bit about those.
You are correct. I have been around for some of these fights. So I said that I worked at MoveOn many years ago. I will tell you how many years ago now. I first joined MoveOn in 2005. I joined shortly before Hurricane Katrina made landfall, Louisiana. And, you know, there was just such an overwhelming sense of sadness and a desire to help from the membership, from the team at MoveOn. And we all came together and we actually did something amazing. There was, and it was just it was a small contribution to helping, but it was incredibly powerful. And we all came together before there was Airbnb, and we used our digital tools and our digital platforms to create a place where MoveOn members could open up their homes and offer rooms, you know, spare bedrooms, spare basements to those who were displaced in New Orleans and around the region from the hurricane. Those people forged some really close relationships over the years. They became like a family together. We actually wrote a book about this effort. The effort was called Hurricane Housing. The book was called It Takes a Nation. Barack Obama wrote the foreword to it, and it was an incredibly powerful experience. And it's to this day one of the things that I've done in my career and in political organizing that I'm really most proud of. And that's just one example of the impact that you all have been able to have over the years. Together, in collaboration with our allies, we have helped, and not the collective we, you have helped grow the progressive movement and demonstrated that ordinary voices and people just like you and me, we can make a difference and we can shift the balance of power in our country. MoveOn members have played crucial roles in persuading the Democratic Party to first oppose and then eventually end the war in Iraq, in helping Democrats retake Congress during the Bush administration. Speaking of that, who remembers first that Nancy Pelosi was the first woman to become Speaker of the House, and what year she became the first Speaker of the House, first woman Speaker of the House? That's right. It was 2007. And that was an exciting year. MoveOn members also played a really critical role in securing the Democratic nomination for President Obama in 2008, with an endorsement well before the Super Tuesday primaries. And we did a lot of work in the Obama years together, all of us. Who remembers the work that we did passing healthcare reform? Does anyone remember what year we passed healthcare reform? Rahna, do you remember what year we passed healthcare reform?
I think we campaigned all through 2009, but eventually was passed in 2010.
That is correct. Good job, Rahna. We even mobilized more than 500,000 people to help take down the Confederate flag from the South Carolina state capitol grounds. And that was a campaign that was launched on MoveOn's petition platform. We also led a massive grassroots mobilization to secure Obama's diplomatic victory in securing the Iran deal. And since immediately after the election of Donald Trump, sorry, it's still hard for me to talk about the fact that that is a thing that happened. MoveOn helped serve as one of the pillars of the resistance movement. And it was your actions that made that resistance movement so powerful. MoveOn members were at the forefront of the resistance to Trump and the Republican Party when they tried to take healthcare that we fought so hard for away from tens of millions of people, when they cut taxes for corporations and their rich donors, and throughout their repeated ongoing attacks on all of our communities, immigrant communities, Muslim communities, LGBTQ Americans, working families, women, and so many more. Through mass mobilization, for sure, and getting out in the streets, but also rapid response activism, signing petitions, sending letters to our members of Congress, making phone calls, joining district meetings with your members of Congress. We were really able to mitigate the harm that person could have done as president. It could have been worse. And it's thanks to the activism and the presence of folks like you that it wasn't. Since 2017, MoveOn was one of the leading groups supporting the impeachment of that person. Who remembers what year the first impeachment happened? We started calling for it in 2017. When did it happen? Yes. 2019 is the first time that it happened. And we did this thanks to the work that we all did together to retake the House of Representatives and have Democrats be in charge of it. And we helped take back the House through a campaign at MoveOn called Resist and Win. Who participated in Resist and Win? Thank you. Thank you, everyone who participated. And with that campaign, we endorsed and supported more than 100 federal candidates, as well as more than 100 state and local candidates. And guess what? We won. And it was a really big win. And it was a win that sent a lot of women of color to Congress for the first time, a historic number of women, period. It was one of the most representative House of Representatives that we've ever had in our country's history. And we didn't stop there. Last year, we impeached the president again and making him the first president to be impeached twice. And of course, the biggest thing that happened last year is that we elected Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And because of the work that so many people here did, we were also able to take back the Senate. So all of this is just not like, this isn't just a walk down memory lane. I hope it serves as a reminder that like, we can do hard things and we can do big things and we can do them together. And it's because we come together in spaces like this and use our voices collectively that we're able to leverage so much change.
Thank you. Bravo, 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 bravo. Which is also why I am confident that we can organize and we can mobilize in this moment. And we can show our collective power to ensure Congress does take advantage of the moment that we're in to pass a once in a generation bill to fundamentally change our economy. So don't be discouraged by the news you hear about what's happening in Washington. Legislation making is hard, y'all. And as Nita was speaking, I was remembering the Obamacare fight in 2009 through 2010. And you know what? Obamacare was declared dead by the media dozens of times before it became law, just like we're experiencing right now. We did it then, and we can do it again. And we believe in people power. It will win the day in the end. But of course, our work won't end with one bill, as I said before, because passing the Biden agenda is not enough. We have to protect our majorities, and that takes us into 2022. Nita, what should we say about that?
So, you are right, per usual. And I am going to tell you guys a couple of secrets. We are already hard at work on our election plan for next year. And why are we already hard at work at it? Because it is going to be a pivotal election. There is so much at stake that, we're in a historic crisis right now. And that means that we have a historic opportunity in front of us, right? To, as President Biden says, not just build back, but build back better, right? And in order to continue to do that, to tackle the climate crisis and so much more, we need to protect and expand our majorities. That's the number one goal. That's the name of the game for the next year. And here's another secret. We are going to run at MoveOn the biggest election program in a non-presidential year that we have ever run in our more than 20-year history. And we are really looking forward to working with all of you on that program, because as we all know, there's never been more at stake.
And we can't do it without the folks at this summit, our millions of MoveOn members. You all are literally what power this work and power MoveOn. So our past wins, our current fights, our future plans, they're nothing without y'all. So welcome to the Progressive Power Summit. You are what makes this organization great. You are what makes the organization powerful. And we're so excited that you're here today. I hope you enjoy these 3 days as much as the team has enjoyed putting it together. And thank you for being here. And most importantly, our famous tagline, thank you for all that you do. Durrel?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rahna and Nita. And so now we said this was going to be interactive. It is going to be interactive. And we're going to bring one more person to the conversation. Be sure to ask any questions that you have in the chat. But before starting the conversation, before we have this panel discussion, I want to introduce the executive director of WFP, Maurice Mitchell. So Maurice, if you want to talk a little bit about your organization before we get this conversation started.
Oh.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Durrel and Nita and Rahna. It was just so wonderful to kind of ear hustle and listen to all of the amazing work across the years of MoveOn and your members, and all of the interventions that MoveOn has really led, and many of the interventions that we at WFP and MoveOn have partnered together on in order to defeat the forces of evil that were manifested in the Trump administration, and then post-Trump continue to challenge Trumpism and continue to make sure that everything that we invested in translates to victories. It's happening right now. So Working Families Party is a national political movement of everyday people. The things that we're most proud of is the fact that we try to build the pipelines of everyday progressives, teachers, educators, organizers, idealistic folks who could run and win on the local level, on the municipal level, and sometimes could even become Congress people, so that the people are the ones that are actually in the places of power deciding what policy looks like. Progressive policy, not just Democrats, but progressives, pushing the boundaries of what's possible so that we can live in a country that really invests in all of us. Now, that's what we do. We proudly challenge the Democrats to stand up to the values that they profess, and also demonstrate on our own through independent political power what it looks like to build a politics that's truly grassroots. And we're so happy to be in relationship with and in partnership with you all, the wonderful folks that MoveOn.
Thank you so much, Maurice. So we actually have a question, and I'm going to pose it to Rahna first. This comes from Eric Offengan, and he asked, how do we win electorally if a Republican-led legislature decides to overturn election results or cast endless doubt on the results?
Ooh, let's start with the big questions. First, before I get into that, I just want to appreciate Maurice Mitchell for joining us here today and just publicly say to all of our members what a strong and beautiful partnership we've had with Working Families Party, and grateful for your leadership, Maurice, but more importantly, grateful for the leadership of members of the Working Families Party who are the boots on the ground in many ways to our like massive distributed at scale movement. So I'm really, really grateful. Okay, so the question around how are we going to win if Republicans are basically rigging stuff, right? Okay. Whew, well, it's a big thing, but there are many ways at this. And MoveOn, we work with our partners like Working Families Party and other organizations in the progressive movement to look at the broad electoral landscape and say, what are the plays that we need to make collectively? And which role are MoveOn members going to take? Which role are WFP members going to take? Which role are Color Change? Like, we're not doing this in a vacuum. So we are looking at the 2022 election landscape with clear eyes that we know Republicans are passing laws in the states to make it harder to vote. We know that they're electing leaders of their own party. Republicans are electing leaders in their party that believe in the big lie and that Donald Trump actually won the 2022 or the 2020 election. And we know that they're running folks for Secretary of State that don't have the interests of American democracy at heart. So MoveOn, as part of that 2022 election plan, we're looking at how do we play in Secretary of State races in key states? How do we play in gubernatorial races in key states to ensure that folks that believe in democracy and believe in fair rules and believe in the right to vote are elected into those offices? We also, like in 2020, we worked in partnership with Working Families Party and dozens, if not hundreds, actually over 400 organizations to make sure that we had the whole landscape covered, because we knew not just Donald Trump, but a bunch of folks were working nefariously to try to overturn the results. So we were in lockstep coordination with our friends in Georgia that were working to pressure Raffensperger to do the right thing. And we will do the same. And so when we come to y'all as MoveOn members, we hear you loud and clear. You care about who's elected in office, and you want us to do the work to figure out how we make that happen and then call you in to say, here's where we need you. So that's what we'll do. And we'll do it again. And then the other thing that we're prioritizing is really trying to do everything we can to call out all the troops to come out and show up to push the Freedom to Vote Act, which is the new form of the For the People Act. And it is a sweeping democracy reform legislation that will really safeguard our democracy and our right to vote and protect us from those very scary bills that the Republicans have passed at the state level. I don't know if anybody wants to add into any of that. Okay.
Awesome. We have another question, and I'll pose this one to Nita, then Maurice, then Rahna. Someone wants to know, what's an example of the stories of our members helping change the media tide?
Sorry, can you say I didn't catch last. Okay. Helping change the media.
Can you think of an example when the stories of our members changed the tide in the media?
I mean, I can think of hundreds, but I will tell you I'm going to cheat. I'm going to give two examples. So the biggest place, I think, was in first the fight to pass the Affordable Care Act and then to keep it from being repealed. It was MoveOn members and their stories of their healthcare needs that really shaped the landscape. That this was not a political football, which is what the media really wanted the fight around the ACA both times to be a political football about who's up and who's down. And MoveOn members coming forward, being vulnerable, telling stories of their incredibly sick children or partners or, there was a woman who went on a tour with us to confront insurance executives. She had a debilitating brain tumor, right? And putting that out there really shifted this. That this is a policy that's going to touch people's lives, right? So that was really powerful. And then I think the second thing, which is a thing that really sticks with me, is during our campaign to end the war in Iraq, we would often hold vigils all across the country. And there were we would hear from people who came from deep red states, deep red towns, and they would say, I'm nervous. There's no such thing as an anti-war community in my town. But I'm going to do it because I think that this is important. Right. And that really shifted that, this wasn't a Democrats versus George Bush thing. It was all across the country, in towns all across the country, people were rising up and saying no to this war. And it really changed the whole story around the Iraq war.
Absolutely. Maurice?
Sure. Well, one moment that I really credit MoveOn and its leaders, and a moment that we were involved in, actually there's two. The family separation moment where MoveOn really rallied with a lot of partners. That was a critical moment when so many grassroots leaders, including MoveOn folks, all over the country in so many counties all over the place, really rallied. The other moment that I think it really shifted the conversation is something that we recently partnered on. It's the run up to the election, when we understood the intent of Trump and the Republicans to try to rig and re-engineer the vote. Right? It shifted from a conversation about Trump that centered Trump and his sort of shenanigans, and it focused on the people and the fact that we came out in droves, the fact that we used song and joy in order to push back hate at polling sites all across the country, the fact that we worked in coalition with statewide organizations and large organizations like MoveOn and others, really pushing this narrative that this was a conversation that was about democracy, not about right or left or even anti-Trump. It was about winning our democracy, and we as Americans deciding what type of country we wanted to be. And I'm really proud of the fact that that was the prevailing narrative, not the chicanery and sort of the buffoonish ways that Trump and his crew attempted to try to disrupt our democracy. And MoveOn's leaders had a lot to do with that, in partnership with a lot of other folks. I think the collaboration and the ability for us as a movement to come together was really something beautiful.
The voters decided, y'all. It wasn't about Biden or Trump. The 81 million of us decided. I'm not going to add anything to that, Durrel. I think those are beautiful examples. Yeah.
Awesome. And we have similar questions from Shara Sultan and Miranda Gonzalez, who says, I live in Austin and I want to help turn Texas blue. It is so hard living here as a minority with the government having our interests at heart. And Shira's question more specifically says, living in the South, wanting to keep Democrats in office, what do I do? And I'll pass that one to Rahna.
I actually, sorry, can I turn this upside down a little? I would love to hear, Maurice, your reaction to this question, and then we'll follow up with that.
Yeah, so, I strongly believe, and this is something that Latasha Brown, a friend of mine, says, is that, quote unquote red states, right? They're not red. They're not like perennially conservative. They're just under-organized, right? There are progressives like you in the South. There are progressives like you in Texas. There's progressives all over the place that often feel isolated. And I say that isolation is due to under-organizing, but it's not based on the fact that in the community that you live in, there isn't a desire and a hunger for progressive change and to be able to elect more progressives up and down the ballot. And so I would say find a local organization. Like, we do have a chapter in Texas, WFP. So yeah, I would say text WFP to 30403 and find a local organization that has boots on the ground and that's trying to run local progressives for office. Get involved in that way. Number one. Number two, organize others, right? So through that local organization and through the tools that you're learning through being a MoveOn member, right? Communicate to the people in your community or the people in your social network or the people in your family. You'll be surprised. There's others just like you who might be in the closet because they don't know if they could share their progressive values, right? And then as you build together, you build that momentum. So those are just two things I would share. And I believe in the South. I think that as the South goes, so goes the country. And we're on the verge, I think. We saw what's happening in Georgia. There's no reason to think next cycle or the cycle after that won't happen in Texas and many other southern states.
Thank you. That's beautifully said. And I'll just say, one of the beautiful things about MoveOn, I grew up in a very conservative county, and I didn't think anyone shared my values. But the beautiful thing about MoveOn is no matter where you live, you can be connected to us and you can be called to take action. I often think of us as the gateway drug to political activism. But you can do work with us. You can learn skills here. You can invest here, and you can do work at the local level. You can organize your folks. You can start a MoveOn petition for a campaign in your own community, and you can build a list of other MoveOn members that want to join in with you, and we can support you to organize. So there are many, many ways, and I think Maurice is right. Like, don't give up on the South. Don't give up on your own community. There's so many people out there that do agree with you. The key is finding them, joining together, organizing, and taking action together.
Absolutely. And with that closes out the virtual pat on the back. Hopefully you feel celebrated because it's you who are on the other side of this screen that play such a huge role in the progressive wins. Don't forget, there are sessions that are about to start in 5 minutes. There are 3 sessions that start in 5 minutes. They are the history of organizing and organizing intergenerationally. That's going to be really cool. There's one about relational organizing. MoveOn's 2020 campaigns had a lot to do with relational organizing. And there's a session on storytelling. So go ahead, get your water, get your snacks, and come right back because in 5 minutes, those sessions begin. Thank you all so much, and see you in the other sessions.
All right. Bye. Thank you.